Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of my streaming sessions. I'm Sean Colleen, and if you've been following along lately, you know that we've been working on a bit of a KonMari style repository, and the goal there being to help us be able to archive GitHub repositories within an organization. So this is an app that I'm building because there's a bit of a need for it at my company, where we do a lot of open source work. We put a lot of ideas out there. We prefer to work open first, but then things clutter over time, or ideas fall away, or they don't get completed, and so we want to have some space to clean those things up as well. And so, just to recap for those of you who are joining us for the first time, what we're doing today is we're going to be building or continuing to build a web application that uses Azure Active Directory and authorization to delegate access to users. And those users can then use a sort of administrator level GitHub token to be able to look at repositories and archive them and add issues to them as needed, and do some other things along the way. So where we want to pick up today is when we last left off, we actually had a bit of an issue with Azure Active Directory and the security side of things, and our Docker container, for whatever reason, was only showing was only requesting redirect URIs of HTTP, and so that was we'd request that, and when the user tried to log in, the redirect URI would be incorrect, and we'd see an error, and so I had to look into a little bit for why that wasn't working out of the box, and I actually found it, and so we'll talk a little bit about the process that I used to find that out, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we might want to do to figure that out in the future, and also we'll look at some of the issues that I created and some of the follow-up issues. In fact, maybe I'll even write up the GitHub issue while we're on the stream today. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and start our stream. So, as I want to mention at the start of today's stream, right? This stream, I'm doing this stream on work time because my employer is awesome. I am currently in this specific time in between client engagements, and so my employer, Excella, who is fantastic, by the way, is allowing me to stream this and to be able to bring some content to you all while I work on an internal tool. And I absolutely love that, because I feel like it's the best of both worlds. Like, working on an open source tool, streaming the knowledge of how we do it, and having the backing of a great company in order to do that. Like, chef kiss. Definitely the best of all worlds. And so, I this is something that I figured I would at least give a rundown on the capabilities that Excella has here. So, we do a lot more than just these 5 things. There's a lot under these categories, but in general, Excella is really great at helping you achieve where you want to go with the power of technology. So, realizing a company's future, whether that's in process improvements and the cultural journey that we take to try to be a little, inject a little bit of agility and make sure that we're focusing on business value and make sure that we're running our processes in a lean way. We're able to do modernization of systems. We do ML and AI work really well, and also DevOps and DevSecOps is a huge part of our repertoire. So we also have some advanced data capabilities. We've got every stack of programmer that you can imagine, and so I'm super digging the fact that I get to be spending my time this way. What I am not super digging right now is the state of racial injustice in the world. And so one of the things that I have committed to doing as part of these streams, even though I get to do them from work and I'm going to keep an upbeat attitude, obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now. And there's a lot going on in the world with racial injustice and with the issues that we're seeing around the country. And so as part of running one of these streams, I think it's very important to show some support for a cause. I'm going to do a lot of these streams, but I do want to donate at least a small something from my own money every single time that we run a stream, or every single day that we run a stream. And so today's recipient of my personal funds is going to be the Southern Poverty Law Center. So the Southern Poverty Law Center does a lot of great work fighting, combating hate groups, combating systemic oppression in this country. And so one of the things that I want to do is make sure that they get some donation as well. Yesterday's donation was courtesy of the .NET Foundation suggestion. It was the Equal Justice Initiative. So today we're going to go to the Southern Poverty Law Center here, go to their donation page, and we're going to go, let's see, we'll make a donation here, do $25, one-time gift. And here is where I'm going to actually go ahead and black out the screen for 1 second while I fill out my information and submit that. So give me 1 moment, and I'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Thank you for that. I had a little bit of slowness there with my last pass looking up my credit card information that I've stored there. So for whatever reason, it looks like this is taking a little bit of it's taking a bit of a long time. I'm hoping that it's because this organization is getting absolutely flooded with donations. That would be my goal here. And so while we wait for that to complete, I'm gonna go ahead and we'll talk a little bit more. Let me show that completes. We'll talk a little bit more about what we've done so far. So when we last left off, like I mentioned, we were having some issues with the redirect URI. And so I looked into this and created an issue on the repository. So we'll go check out that real quick and we'll walk through what happened to get us unstuck. Because I think it's important, and you're going to hit this issue if you are working with Azure AD and a Docker container out of the box. And so we'll probably file an issue for that. All right, so we'll go to our repository here. And I'll look at this issue, which thankfully I'll be able to close out now. So currently the redirect URI, when we were using it, was showing HTTP rather than HTTPS. I did some looking around and found some great Stack Overflow threads and some threads on the Microsoft Identity. And it looks like the issue there is because, and I think Barry Dorans, thank you Barry, actually described it pretty well in this thread that I'll go to. So I opened an issue in ASP.NET Core, and I mentioned that I have an issue similar to what I found on the web, and so we were always receiving the reply URL specified does not match the URLs because it was looking for HTTP. And so I mentioned that this issue was for my configuration out of the box with the templates. And Barry was super helpful because he mentioned have you configure the header forwarding middleware. And this is something that I had seen as a potential option, but wasn't quite certain if I wanted to go that route and try that out. And so when Barry confirms it, that seems like the kind of thing that it's worth looking at least. So what happened there is, so I think Barry is pretty spot on here. Inside the container, it's likely that your app is listening on HTTP, and Azure is terminating the HTTPS at the load balancer before forwarding the request onward. I do indeed think that's what was happening. And so what I did is I'll actually go to the pull request there, because I made another little oops, and we'll want to talk about that. So first what I did is in my startup file for my web project here, I created a method. And I called it, for this case, configure hacky HTTPS enforcement, which is really not a fair method name. We'll probably redo that in a little bit. So what we do is we want to set the forwarded headers for our forward headers options in our startup to the X forwarded for and X forwarded proto options. And then what we also want to do is clear out the restrictions on known networks and known proxies, and that's going to allow things to actually be forwarded on. Now, so I did this, and I pushed it, and I was wondering why it still wasn't working, and I was like, it's not having any effect. And then it turns out that the key to actually using it is that I can write that all I want, but I actually wasn't utilizing it. So I had another PR here. It would help if I just used the forwarded headers, where actually in my configure method had to use app.useForwardedHeaders. So that code there to forward on the headers and to actually utilize that code is what ended up resolving the issue for me. Now at that point, once I implemented that, I actually had to go to my Azure portal here, which I will do again. So, and in the Azure portal for this application, previously on the last stream, I had gone into the security or authentication and authorization section here within Azure, and I had turned it on. And actually what had happened now is we're sort of defining our authentication directly from our application to the registered AD app that we had created in the previous stream. But because I had turned this on, it was sort of competing, and I was actually getting back 403 errors. And so I was like, what's going on? And then I realized, oh, they're probably competing. So I came in here and turned it off, and that means that lo and behold, we should be able to go to this website now. I'll go ahead and just pop that out. We should actually see it working now. There we go. There I am. I'm signed in. Fantastic. That's what I'm looking for. So the next step is, okay, what happens? What happens here in terms of the next steps? So I ran into an issue with it looks like an issue at least with the Visual Studio templates, which is to say when you select Azure AD authentication and you also select Docker support with Linux, it seems like what's necessary should be to add this HTTP forwarding logic to make sure that when you deploy first, right off the bat, you're not running into this problem. And granted, yeah, maybe I'll write up a blog post on this or something like that, but I do think it's interesting to and really necessary to kind of also raise the issue with the appropriate team. So I asked Imo Landworth online, and he forwarded me to Kathleen Dollard, who gave me the idea to post in the to post an issue in the templates repository. So I'm going to go ahead and actually do that. So I think it's github.com/temp Visual Studios, or is it .NET templating? So github.com/.net.templating. Which I think may be the same thing as the Visual Studio templates. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to raise this issue there because what I do trust is that worst case scenario, someone's probably dealt with that before and already seen it, and so they'll at least be able to tell me where the heck I might want to go. So let's go ahead and open an issue here for this, and go ahead. And before I do, I usually try to search for this. Don't really know what I would search for here. We'll try to do go ahead and search for HTTPS just to double check. It doesn't look like too much there. I don't see anything offhand. Now this, I'm seeing a lot of stuff for the .NET New, and I'm not sure that Visual Studio is necessarily using that behind the scenes. I'll have to look and see if it is, but that would be interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new issue for now, and we'll trust that hopefully someone can route it to the right place. I don't normally like to do that. Normally I like to put in a little more homework before I do that. So I'm going to go ahead here. First I'm going to silence my phone because it is vibrating. All right. Then what I'm going to do is, go ahead and open that issue, and we'll create issues within Visual Studio when selecting both Azure AD and Docker Linux support. Previously, and I'll just say. Well, first we'll drop a note saying I'm not sure if this is the correct location, as this issue deals with Visual Studio and this repository looks to be largely geared toward .NET New. I'm not in the right spot. Feel free to pass me elsewhere. All right, great. So I like to add that kind of a note because I think it's important when you're dealing with anybody in the community. I mean, they're doing a really good job, but they also have a ton of issues to triage, and so I try to upfront define who is going to be receiving this issue. All right, great. So with that in mind, I'm going to say recently I created a project within Visual Studio. I selected .NET Core MVC. I enabled the options for Azure AD auth, single organization, and Docker container support with Linux. Upon publishing my container to an Azure web app for containers, I noticed that the redirect URI was specified as always using HTTP. I opened an issue here, pasted in that issue there. Turns out I needed to do some additional work to enable header forwarding in order for Azure AD auth to work within the container. I'm hoping that we could get this added to the templating engine so that applications would work out of the box. I I'd be happy to send along a PR if someone points me in the right direction. So who knows, maybe in a future stream we'll go ahead and take something, we'll actually submit it there. So I think it's only right to try to contribute. And people oftentimes talk about contributions to open source, and it's not always just slinging code. I mean, a lot of the contributions I make are documentation or attempting to raise issues that are coherent and just trying to be sort of a good citizen within the open source community. And so if I run into a problem, I try to at least raise an issue about it. If not here, if this doesn't end up being the right spot, then I'll try to raise it through the Visual Studio feedback engine. We'll figure out a way to try to get this in the hands of the right folks. So of course, add a nice message there, sign off, because we're all people and this is really a great ecosystem. So we're going to go ahead and close that. All right, so now we've actually added that issue. Okay, that's great. So a couple of things we want to look at now. Now I'm in my Azure portal for the web application, and I'm looking at the nature of this application is going to be such that I want our IT administrator to have to provision access for someone. So it's not just open to everyone in our org, because it's going to allow you to do some kind of admin-y type things. And so it's really important to me that the IT folks be able to restrict access, or that access is not enabled by default. And so let's look at what we're doing to enable that. So I'm going to go to my Active Directory here. And by my Active Directory, I mean Excel as Active Directory. We're going to go to our app registrations folder. And in those app registrations, we have that conmarepo.web app that we have registered. Now, a couple of things here that we can do. I believe here we can see managed application in the local directory. So here we can actually see the application as deployed in our local directory here. So a couple things that we see. We see the name, the application ID, the object ID within our Active Directory. That's great. And so we can set it up to assign users and groups, provision user accounts, enable self-service, etc. So I actually want to go to properties here. And in the properties, we can see here, enabled for users to sign in. Yes, the application is enabled. That's great. So our RT admins could choose to disable it entirely if they wanted to. That's good. We have the homepage URL, which is not quite what I'm looking for there. I'd probably be looking to fix that, but that's all right. It generated a logo for us, which is pretty basic. And now we're going to go ahead and this field is what we're looking for. User assignment required. If we hover over that, we can see users must first be assigned to this application before being able to access it. That's exactly what we want in this case. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. I'm going to save this app. I'm going to save this. And now we should be able to go to users and groups. Users and groups, we can see that I have been provisioned for this. I have the object type, I'm a user, and I have the default access. That's great. So what I want to do is I want to check here. I'm going to first want to double check and make sure I can still access the site, and I can. And now I want to verify that that works. I'm actually going to go ahead and remove my own access here. I can always add it back. Remove my own access, sure. One application assignment has been removed. Great, great, great. So let me go ahead and refresh. And actually, I think I'm going to have to sign out here. All right. Go ahead and we'll clear out some storage here. Just, it's in case it's a... All right, so we've successfully signed out. Great. Now we're going to go back to the site here. We see sign into my account. Okay. I really need a longer password by default. Okay. So now this isn't oh, also by the way, we're only seeing this because I have developer mode turned on from previously, so we'll undo that as well. But we can see access denied, the signed in user, email hidden is not assigned a role for the application. So the good news is that's exactly the result that we want. We just don't want this developer error page. So let's go ahead and go back to the website, and we'll clean up some of those environment variables. Oh, I'll also add myself back because I guess I do want to access the application after all. So let's go to our configuration settings here for the web application. And what we want to do is we want to remove that ASP.NET Core environment that we had added previously, which specified as the development environment. It is not the development environment, so we don't want that. We also were trying out this Azure AD redirect URI. That's not a thing that we're actually using because we ended up not going that route. We solved our redirect URI issue the other way. Okay, so I think given that, we're going to go ahead and save these settings. Going to update the settings. All right, we should at this point be able to go to website. We should see a better error message or a less developer-y error message. Oh, you know what? I think I may need to go ahead and restart. All right, so let's try this one more time. We'll go to our website here. We should see the sign in. Hopefully we don't see a developer style error page. Okay, so this is the error. This is the style of error that we're actually going to be wanting to see, right? So we want to see the development mode error. We have a request ID that we can trace later. So this is exactly what I was looking for there. All right, we'll go back and assign me access again. We'll refresh, make sure I can get in, and then we should be off and running to keep building our application. So that means, so where we left off last time was we were able to build and push the container, and then I was sort of deploying it locally here. So we're going to set up an Azure DevOps release. And now remember that we're doing all of this upfront in sort of a part of a basic hello world style application. And so why are we doing that? And just to recap from previous streams, I'm a firm believer in getting that pipeline set up as early as possible so that you can iterate on it and you can make small tweaks and you can really build out on it as you go. I think that sometimes people find these hurdles a little bit hard to clear, but hopefully you can see that in the past couple of streams we've been able to at least make a dent in the process. And yeah, it slows a little bit of the momentum up front, but I keep thinking of it as an investment in the future development cycles that we have. All right, so let's go back ahead. Let's go back again to that managed application, users and groups. We'll go ahead and assign me again. Add a user. I'll look myself up. Okay, there I am. And the role is default access. And you can see that's really the only role that's enabled. Go ahead and assign. All right, there I am. I'm back. Go ahead and go to that website one more time. Sign in. Really? This time LastPass isn't gonna... All right. Okay. Sure, I will stay signed in. All right, there we go. All right, so we are added, we're back, and now we are free to move on to creating an Azure DevOps release. That's great. And also, while we're at it, I want to check on what happened with our donation to the SPS Center. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to look at my email real quick just here on my phone. I don't want to pull it up on the stream, but I want to verify that donation was actually received. Yes. So SPLC gift acknowledgement was received, so that's good. It looks like it was just having some problems with, it was just having some trouble going ahead and actually showing us the result page. So that's fine. I'm glad the donation went through. All right, we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. So we've got our containers, we've got our website, we got things in working order, things are provisioned. That's awesome. That's great momentum. I'm going to go ahead and close out this URL redirect issue. So we'll say issue resolved via 11 and 12. Go ahead and close that. Oh, it's going to bug me if I don't specify the issue number. There we go. All right. So we've closed that. Great. So next up, let's go to our Azure DevOps instance here. Our pipelines. What we see here too is, and also if you're joining the chat, welcome and welcome to the stream. Happy to have you here. Feel free to participate, ask questions. It can be about what we're doing. It can be about anything else in the ecosystem that you want to talk about. I'm happy to take on a little tangent, and I'm happy to have you here. So feel free to feel free to do to jump in at any time. I'm absolutely happy to have that. Okay, let's go into our pipeline here. And so next up, what we're going to do, we've got our pipeline. I actually want to start creating releases. And so in our pipeline definition, I think what we can do is we'll have releases here. We'll create a new release pipeline. And our release for now is going to be one release automatically directly from the master branch into production, because that's how we're going to roll. In future streams, we're going to add a deployment slot. We'll add a sort of a development stage or a testing stage before our production stage. But for right now, I see no reason to hold off on that. So we're going to go ahead, and our template is going to be, I believe what we want to do is web app. Azure App Service Deployment is, I think, what we want to do in this case. So that'll be our deployment here. So first, we're going to add an artifact. The artifact here is we want the output of a build. So we want TXL Labs Conmaripo build. That's great. We want the default version. What is the latest version? That's what's going to happen there. Now we can say we can take a specific branch, we can take a specific whatever. So here what we're going to say is we only want the latest from a specific branch, and that branch is going to be our master branch. So whenever a build finishes successfully from the master branch, it's going to create a release, which is what we want here. All right, I'm not going to worry about tags. I'm not using git tags in this case. We're just worried about the branch that it's coming from. So that looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and add, and now once that happens, we can enable here. We see there's continuous deployment trigger. Right now it's disabled. We'll give it one manual test, and then we'll enable that afterwards. So we've got our pre-deployment conditions here, right? It's going to happen automatically once the release is created. We have stage 1, which we're going to call deploy to production right now. Right? And the job that we have is going to be, within that, is going to be to deploy this Azure App Service, okay? So we're going to, which subscription am I using? That's a good question. Let's go back. Check which subscription I'm in. I believe it's the one that ends with 6951. Okay. All right, now I have to authorize. I'll click authorize on that to actually give Azure DevOps access to that, which is totally fine. All right, so we want web app for containers, Linux. The app service name that we're going to be deploying to is, there we go, Conmaripo. The registry or namespace, so it's going to be linked to a setting in deploy Azure App Service, okay. So I think, I'm not quite sure here. So let's go double check our container registry information. I believe the repository that we talked about was conmaripo.web. All right, and the registry or namespace, I believe, is going to be on the overview tab here. I think this is correct. We'll see. More than likely or not, it's not correct, and that's fine, and we'll figure it out. Okay, so we want to deploy to production. Great, great, great. And what I am not seeing is the idea of tags. So I don't know that this is actually the right one. So I'm going to go ahead here and look for container, deploy containers to Azure App Service. That's what we want. We don't want Azure App Service in general. I thought that looked a little weird. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. We'll do it again. Azure Web App for Containers. There we are. Okay, we'll do this one more time. We already have an Azure Service connection here. That's what we want. The app name is comma repo. We're not going to deploy to a slot right now. We don't have any app slots set up, deployment slots for like a non-production web app or anything we want to do there. So we're not going to do that just yet. The image name, now if you see here, specify the fully qualified container image name. For example, my registry.azure suto.nginx latest. So I think what we want to do here is we want to pull an image name, and it's going to be our container registry. We don't want to pull Nginx. We want to pull the container that matches our repository here. And you'll note too that they want us to provide the tag. So we have the tag previously from the build and the build ID that we were using. And so in this case, what we're going to do here is we'll leave that colon blank, and I want to look up some of the syntax for that. I'm just going to use I'm going to go back to our Azure Pipelines YAML real quick just to look for, I think it was build.buildID. I believe that we can use this in our release pipeline as well. Now, we'll see if I'm actually right about that. I have a feeling that maybe I'm not correct about that. Configuration file, we're not worried about that right now, but we can see we can add give a path to a Docker Compose file, for example, and that should be, I think, assuming that I'm correct about my assumptions there, that should be all that we need to go ahead and deploy this. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. We can save it. I'm just going to save it in the folder. I'm not going to give it a comment because I'm a rebel today. Okay, so let's go back to our pipeline here. And build.buildID should get pulled in, I believe, into the release from the output of the other build. So we have new release pipeline. Let's give that an actual name. That's not new release pipeline. Let's call it Maripo production deployment path. Okay, let's save. All right, and now once we have that, we right now we did not turn on automatic releases, right? So we are going to want to create a manual release here. Let's just see how it goes. All right, so it looks like stages for a trigger change from automated to manual. I just realized something. In the containers that we're building and pushing, we are using the build ID as well. Good. I was worried that we were not going to be using that correctly. So I think we should be okay in that case. All right. Cool. So let's go ahead and we will select this build. That is the build that we want. That's fine. We'll go ahead and create that. So that should pull the build ID and do all that stuff. We'll see. I'm going to click on the release that we created. We can see that that's queued. So let's go ahead and open that up and follow along. And let's be real, probably watch it fail, because that is what most of these things do the first time out. While we're doing that, first of all, thanks to the folks who've joined us. I'm really happy to have you here. And if you have any questions about what's going on, or if you want to get caught up on what we're doing, happy to talk to you a little bit further about that. So feel free to drop questions in the chat room or anything along those lines. Hey, it looks like our deployment to production actually succeeded. Let's check the logs for that. Okay. Double check and see if it actually deployed, push that container. Got the service action, restarted successfully. Trying to update, okay. Only got service connection, single container deployment to web app as the only image detail was specified. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to make a change. I want to see if that change flows all the way through, because I don't necessarily have the full confidence that that is going to flow through all the way like we want. So give me one moment here. We'll see. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's go back to our code here. All right. We'll pull our master branch, and I'm going to make a quick silly change to the home page or something like that, and we'll see if we can get that deployed via our pipeline. All right, so I'll pull this up in Visual Studio Code. Oh, I forgot to enable Karnak, which is what I'm using for those keyboard shortcuts so that they can show on the screen. So I've now done that. Let's see, we should have that show up now. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do here, let's just go into the home page. Welcome. We'll add some exclamation points because why not? I'm not going to bother with a PR for this one as I'm specifically just trying to kick off a build. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-P, which should allow us to pull up that command palette. We'll say commit and say adding more excitement, exclamations. Great. All right, so now we've got that. I'm going to use the command palette again, and we'll say push. I could have also clicked on the icon down here to do that, but I did not do that. Okay, so that should be pushing. All right, and now let's see our pipeline again. Oh, and while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead into our releases and edit that real quick and set up automatic releases. So no filters there. Oh, actually, we'll do a branch filter here. There we go. Okay, so we will add that there. We're not going to build pull requests, okay, which means I should be able to click over to here after release. Okay, just double checking that this doesn't specify a branch as well. Cool, it doesn't. So if I'm looking at that, I'm looking at, we now have the automated releases. Okay, we'll save that. All right, so this should create a new release afterwards. We'll see how that goes. Let's follow it along. So with any luck, my hope here is that we're going to have this build will finish, it'll kick off the release will take the container that we push to our container registry, it'll then deploy that to our the running web app for containers instance, and then we should have a pipeline established. So this is worth following along and seeing how that works. All right, so it's pulling the container. We can see, okay, it's pulled it, it's pushed it there. It has pushed that container, okay. Looks like it pushed it with the ID that I would expect. 1186 is what we should see. So 1186, it has pushed that. Let's go over to our releases. Hey, we see that release 2 has been created. That's fantastic. See if we can follow along there. In progress. We can see it's pushing the 1186 there. All right, it has succeeded. So let's go ahead and see if we can refresh that page. Hopefully we see some exclamation points and we see some excitement there. Fantastic. Okay, so at this point that means that we've got a pipeline established. Our application is now building in a Docker container. It has a build process where it's building the container. It is then building the container, pushing it to our container registry, creating a release, automatically deploying that to our production website. So at this point we have kind of a continuous delivery pipeline going. Now it's a bit risky, of course, right? We have no tests that we're running right now, right? Hopefully we'll take care of that soon. But for now, I think that this seems like a reasonable thing to do. Okay, so I think the first thing that I want to do, or the next thing that we want to do, let's go ahead and start to use GitHub issues to sort of flesh out what we're thinking about here. And so one of the things that I want to do is go ahead. Oh, hey there, Commander Root and Space Thomas. Nice to have you here, by the way. Sorry I didn't say hello to you earlier. Great to have you. Feel free to jump in with any questions you have, any other topics that you want to discuss. Totally great by me. All right, so what we have here is we're back to the website here. Let's go ahead and think about how we want to structure this. Okay, first we have one last thing. We remove the development environment config. So we have done that. We'll close that issue. I had also previously enabled the show PII option. So that's definitely something we want to disable. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Don't remember where that was, but I think it's in my code here. All right, so we definitely want to remove that because I'm not trying to show PII in error messages for sure. All right, so we'll remove that, and while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and commit that, remove. In fact, we'll do a branch there and remove that issue so we can keep the traceability. All right, so 8. I'll do the number of the issue and then I'll underscore that. We'll say remove the show PII option. We'll bring my changes over. Thank you, GitHub desktop. All right, we'll commit that. Do show PII option. Great. I'm hitting Control Enter to commit that change there, and I want to create a pull request here, which in GitHub desktop is going to be Control R. It'll give me the option to publish my branch. I'm a big fan of keyboard shortcuts. I never remember them as much as I'd like to, but I do try. Okay, so now we've got an open pull request, and so since I know it's issue number 8 because it's in my branch name, which is how I help my brain remember these things. So I'll say resolves number 8. We'll create that pull request. And now I could wait for the Azure build to run on this PR, and then, you know, as we get more complex, I'm definitely going to do exactly that. In this case, it's a minor change. I know why I added it. I know what I'm doing there. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that pull request before the build even kicks off. All right, and then there were 3 issues. Deploy to Azure site, preferably via containers. Done. Azure DevOps pipeline is done. And I'm not sure which license I want first, so that's fine. All right, so I think what's next is I want to be able to enumerate the GitHub repositories that exist in my organization. And so I think that's pretty important to do. And so I'm going to end up using the Octokit library for this. And what we're going to do is we'll create a personal access token. We'll add that to my secrets file and the configuration, and then we'll actually get a controller in place to list out these repositories and see what we can do. Okay, so let's start there. Okay, so first up, I'm going to want to pull my latest here. Pull my master branch again. Let's write up an issue that talks a bit about what we want. So we want to do feature list GitHub repositories within my organization. Within, I'll say the organization, because we have to say organization should be specified in a config file. So for example, I'm going to build this app for the Exceloco organization, but we're going to put that in the config file itself. This application by its nature is not meant to be across all GitHub organizations. It's really going to be deployed for one GitHub organization, at least for now. And so that's why I'm making this configurable. If someone else deploys this, I want them to be able to do something along those lines. I want them to be able to change the configuration without much trouble there. All right, so the organization will, I'll say specifically the GitHub organization should be specified in config. All right, and then I also want, I'll say no paging for now. I want them all in one list. Okay, and I'm going to say potential follow-up issues, and I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe caching the list, right? GitHub, the Octokit the Octokit library is great. It uses the GitHub API, but because it uses the GitHub API, that also means that you have things like API rate limits and API call limits, and you have to sometimes wait a little bit to use your access key again. And while I don't think this is going to really operate on that scale where we would have to worry about something like that, it is something where caching and saving an API call is sometimes preferable. So we'll have something like caching the list I'll have as a potential follow-up issue. What I do there with potential follow-up issues, by the way, for myself, is I'm thinking about, okay, before I close this issue in GitHub, I want to think about other issues that I might need to create to kind of keep things going. Okay, so caching the list might be something we want to think about. Okay. For now, this I think seems good. We don't want to do anything yet except display the repositories. The other thing is, the other piece of the puzzle is that we want the GitHub access token to be stored in Azure Key Vault. So we're going to create an Azure Key Vault instance because I don't like the idea of pasting tokens directly into configuration. It's not something that sits well with me, and maybe I'll have that in my local secrets.json file just because it's expedient. But generally speaking, I don't even want the config to be in my Azure configuration. Who knows where that gets read out and stuff like that. So instead, we're going to utilize Azure Key Vault. We're going to store the key there. We're going to store the secret there. We're going to allow that to be fed into our application's configuration. So that'll be a fun little adventure too. I've done that a bunch of times, so hopefully that part will go pretty smoothly. Okay. With that, we'll create that issue. So this is going to be number 14. All right, and so I'll test that locally, and then we'll get the we'll develop it locally, and then we will get that key vault, etc. set up. All right, so I'm going to create a new branch to get started. On 14, let's say list organization repositories. Okay. Now, I'm thinking, how do I want to do it in its own controller? I could do that. I mean, for me, I'm thinking the home page of this application, if you have access, is going to be somewhere where you want to go to do that. Now, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, do we allow anonymous access on the home controller? Probably. Oh, no, we're authorizing on the home controller as well. So what I think we could do then is we're going to reuse the home controller's index page here, and we're going to apply a model of that. And so what I want to do, and also I should mention here, I'm in sort of exploratory mode. What I'll probably do after I get this done, right, we'll do some refactoring, we'll probably add some tests around it, we'll do that kind of thing, and that way we can have our container start building our tests, right, and kind of keep that momentum going for some quality development. For now, I kind of want to see it work, and so I'm going to be a little fast and loose. I'm going to allow myself to kind of maybe dump some models right in here in this file and extract them out later, and that's just sort of the way it helps me work, because it's sort of like a scratch pad, and then I have some muscle memory afterwards where we should go back through and reorganize some things. So that's just sort of a little bit about how I think about the process. All right, so in this case, I think we're going to want to do some sort of list, obtain list of GitHub repos, pass through to the view. Okay, so we're going to want to say we'll have some kind of list of a GitHub repo class. So let's do a public class GitHub repo, and I'm going to want to have something like a we'll do public string name, and I want these to be immutable, so I'm going to kind of do this, and we'll just do we'll say name. All right, so now I'll have to specify the name when I create the GitHub repo, and then it should be, no one should be able to set it afterwards, and that's just kind of how I like to work when possible. I try to make things immutable when I can. It probably doesn't add a ton of helpfulness here, but it's just a sort of habit that I try to be in. All right, we have this idea of a logger that gets passed into our controller, so that's nice as well. Okay. All right, so next up we need to and I tend to make a lot of tiny commits along the way, by the way, so we're probably going to do sort of this thing. So I'll say, okay, basic Poco and some comments. Okay, so we got started, and then we'll push this up so that we can kind of keep that going. We'll mark that with work in progress. And when I'm getting started with these things, I tend to allow myself to follow some of these tangents as well, especially if it's something that allows me to make a better setup for the future. And so all these kind of like, managerial type stuff or process type stuff, I'm willing to sort of go down each of those rabbit holes so that we can have a better system set up overall. So when we see here, I added WIP, which for me stands for work in progress. Basic Poco and some comments. For those of you not familiar with Poco, that's plain old CLR object or plain old C# object. So it's not really an object that does much. It just kind of has some fields. It's meant to kind of encapsulate some idea of data. All right, so we go ahead and we've got our work in progress here. Now WIP, whenever I do something like that, it reminds me of the WIP bot. There's some great bots out there with a tool called Probot, and so I'm actually going to probably add that to my repository as part of this. So I tend to open PRs early and often. I want people to be able to see how I work. If they have comments or changes that need to be made, I tend to want to make many small commits and let them comment sooner rather than later. If it's noisy or people are getting notifications, I might come down here and create a draft pull request instead. In this case, I'm not going to do that. So we're going to say list GitHub repositories within the organization, and we'll say if this resolves number 14. But it's WIP. So right now, I wouldn't want to be able to merge this. Right, I would want something to tell me, hey, this is a work in progress. Like if I came in here to merge this right now, I don't want that to be green, right? I want that to definitely be something that we can't do. So I'm actually gonna, I think it's called WIP bot. GitHub Apps WIP bot. This has been renamed to WIP. Great. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and configure that. I want it on Excel Labs here. I think that's the password. We'll see. All right. So allow authors to set a status. So you can use WIP, work in progress, a construction sign, which is kind of nice. I like the construction sign one. I don't want to allow it for all repositories now, so I want to allow it right now for Conmar repo. Great. So add that. We'll save it. That is now installed. We can see here it already has appeared. Man, I love how fast that is. We already see it's appeared here, WIP, it's in progress, the title contains WIP, so I can only merge it if I provide that sort of admin, like, yes, I know what I'm doing piece of this, and that usually just reminds me to take WIP out of the title of the PR. Okay, so we've got that in there now, resolves 14. Okay, we've got our first commit. Let's continue. So next up, I want to go ahead and add a NuGet package here. I'll just do it within the Visual Studio UI. These days I tend to dump out to the command line for a lot of this stuff, but what the hey. Go ahead. We'll add Octokit, so want to browse. Fantastic, Octokit 0.47. This is a fantastic project, by the way. If you're ever looking to get involved in open source, I did a couple of PRs to this project a while back. It's just a super welcoming group, and the GitHub folks are always great to work with, and it's really a great community effort. So highly recommend that. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Sure. All right, that's done its thing. The package is installed. Go ahead and commit that. Add Octokit. I will never ever get tired of seeing adding a NuGet package, and the only thing in the CS proj is this one line. Oh, that is so nice. I am so happy to be in a .NET Core world and not an old CS proj world. So, hey there, Aten. Great to see you in the chat. I was saying earlier, we're working on this Azure DevOps, so we're working on some of our basic stuff here. Feel free to dump any questions into the chat. Definitely happy to talk about anything as we go. So don't be a stranger. All right. Go ahead and push that commit. All right, so we've got Octokit installed now, and now I'm going to do the bad thing. I'm going to wire this up right in my controller. I'm not going to do any sort of DI. I'm not going to do any of that stuff yet because, again, I intend to refactor that out as part of this pull request. So I kind of let myself be a little messy up front just so I can kind of get some momentum here. So go to my home controller. Let me zoom in a little bit, actually. There we go. So we've got our thing here. So let's go ahead and within our home controller, we'll just wire it up. So private, it's a GitHub clients, I believe. So client equals new GitHub. Probably should equal GitHub clients. Now we can do a couple things here. We can provide the connection information, we can provide the product header information, a couple of things here, right? So I think what we want to do, create some instance. I'm just double checking this. the name and version of the product you're using. Okay, so I think we're going to want to do the product header version and then the credential store, and I think we're going to want to use a token for the credential store, is what I'm thinking. So what we'll do here is we'll say new product header value, and the name that we have here, I'm not going to worry about the name, or I'm not going to worry about the version in this case. So we'll just do the name is conmaripo, so we can say where this access request is sort of coming from, and then we want a new credential store. So I think I want to do a new in-memory credential store, new credentials, and I think we can see here there's a string token and an authentication type. So I think that's what we're looking for here, right? I'm going to generate a personal access token, and I'm going to have something about the authentication type, I believe. So for now, let's just do an empty string. And the authentication type is going to be not username, password needs to be bearer. It looks like I can just do a string token without that. So let's just do that. We'll let it use the default, which I think is going to be fine for our purposes. Okay, now we're going to need to get that from the configuration somewhere, right? So we're going to have app settings here. In our Azure AD, we're going to also have a GitHub section. We'll have a setting called access token. And then we'll also default that right now to change me. Okay, so now I've got this configuration here, and I should be able to reference that in a strongly typed way. So I believe if I call it GitHub Settings, and I create a POCO class, and then I strongly bind that to my class, I think I can actually just get that to work. So let's go ahead and start up. Let's say I believe it's in startup. You know what? And this is fun too, because I always forget about the actual syntax for doing this configuration. So we're going to go over to our Google. .NET Core strongly typed configuration injection. Thank you, Rick. So often a great source of information. Going to want to say my settings, right? Configure my settings, configure, right, there we go. That's exactly what I was looking for. Okay, so we're going to want to have right here for now, just since I'm dumping all my custom code in here, and I'll extract it out later, we'll also say public class GitHub Settings and public string access token. All right, so I've got my GitHub settings there, and now I want to, in my startup class, actually configure that. Call it GitHub Settings, and the section is GitHub Settings. All right, so now we have our GitHub settings should be there, access token should be there. All right, so what I should get when I inject that into my home controller, as I'm going to do, our home controller here with the logger, I'm also going to do an I think it's iConfiguration. iConfiguration options, perhaps. I never remember the right one. Remember, something configures the T options type. Okay, I believe that's what I want. I configure options, and I want that to be the GitHub settings. GitHub settings. Now again, I'm injecting this now, but I'll probably end up moving this all out so that we're wiring it all up per request when we need it, rather than doing it here. But that's okay. So we can always do that later. So we've got GitHub settings here. Let's just do private GitHub settings. GitHub settings. All right. So I've got that. I'm gonna go ahead and suggest here that, in fact, we don't actually need the GitHub settings here. Just need them to be injected. So this is going to be here. We should have a strongly typed object. GitHub settings dot. Okay, I don't think that's right. So maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Oh, okay, sorry. Token GitHub settings dot. Okay, perhaps I'm not. I think I'm injecting the wrong type there. Let's get it right. Let's go back to the blog, because I'm always jumping ahead. Right. Add options. It's a basic figure. .add services.add options. Okay, we want I options of T. Of course, had I read the actual code sample, that would have been a little bit easier. Okay, so services.add options, and then we'll have our configuration there, and now we should be able to do I options. That's a bit better. So GitHub settings dot value dot access token. All right. So now again, I'm assuming some things here, right? So I'm going to say, add some to-dos here. Right. We're going to want to do an input check there. I'm also going to add some logging here. Since we have the logging, I'm going to say logger dot log information token is, and that we'll use that right now because we're going to want to token is token contents, and then we will add that here. Now I'm going to add a to-do as well because we want to remove that, because this is just for us to verify that we're even seeing the change me value. We certainly don't want to log that out in general, so I'll have that to remove. In fact, I'm going to move that on to the next line ahead because I want it to be prevalent. We will also see it in our PR. Okay. So it looks like, okay, so we've got our settings are coming in. We've got our inputs coming in there. We've got the logger logging things out. All right. Excellent. And so now what we need to do here is, I think we just have that token, so that's good. I'm going to just extract that out using Control RV and resharper, var credentials. Okay. So it looks like we're pretty good there. Okay. All right, so next up we should log this, and I'm actually going to leave the home page as is, right? I'm not going to do anything with it yet. We've got our POCO that nothing is being done with so far, and really what I'm doing is just looking to see if that is actually going to show us the logged value of that access token, which should at this point be change me per our settings file here. All right, so let's go ahead, build that, go ahead and run it. Okay, it is running presumably somewhere. Oh, here we go. Just took it a second. We have to log in. This makes sense. Okay, see our 3 exclamation points as well. So let's look at, don't know if we've configured any logging at this point. I'll have to double check and see what the defaults are there. So we're on the home controller, so presumably that would have been logged out. So let's see if we have output. There we go. All right, so we got our logging output token has changed me. So okay, great. So we've now injected the configuration. It's a strongly typed configuration, which is, in my opinion, the way to go. It's definitely pulling that change me value. So I think we're at the spot now where we can start to wire up that client, that GitHub client, with the actual access token. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to generate an access token. Myself here. I'm going to go ahead and go to my settings. Well, I guess I have to do a personal access token actually. So never mind, that's fine. Let's go here to my own security settings. I'm going to use this token as me. When we deploy this, I'm going to get the token from our admins that has the ultimate authority to do the things that we're looking to do. That's totally fine. All right. So don't need to change my password. Let's go ahead and go to developer settings, personal access tokens. Got a bunch of them. Let's generate a new one. Okay, we're going to call this con.maripo local development. So I want, I'm looking at, okay, these are all repositories, so I definitely want to know the commit status. I'm definitely going to want to access the public repos. I don't know that I want full control over repositories unless that includes deleting. No, deleting is a separate permission, which is good. Okay, I'm going to need to. Okay, don't think I need to worry about users. I don't think I need to worry about billing or workflows at this point. I am going to need the ability to delete a repo, but I'm not going to check it off for now. That's the kind of thing that I will add later. I'm not trying to enable a potential nightmare situation, and I want to test with our actual list of apps. So to me, it's something where I want to test it, and we'll see. All right. So I've got my tokens defined. I'm going to go ahead and copy that real quick. So hold on for one moment and stand by. All right, so I have copied that token, and I have I've gone ahead and added that to my secrets.json file, which for those of you who are just joining us, I had gotten to by right-clicking and clicking Manage User Secrets, and that's a great way to be able to capture those secret values at development time. So I think that's really important. Now, of course, we're going to want to go ahead and remove that logging line, because I'm not trying to spit out those for all of you on the video feed. All right, and now we should be able to actually create that GitHub client. So now once we've got that client, we've got it stored here. Okay, that's great. So for the index, I think what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to say clients.repository.getAll for org. Okay, and so we have a string organizations and an API option. So that, remember, we're going to want to probably have a GitHub organization. So we're going to have the organization that we care about, and right now that's going to be Excelico. In fact, I'll leave it as change me now, even though it's not a secret, just because I think that we'll want to make sure that we have some clarity around what we're changing there. And then in this case, it's not a secret, so I'm going to go into my app settings development item here. And I'm going to add those settings, and I'm going to override the organization with Excel Co. That gives me the ability to to override those files, make sure that my standard configuration isn't going to get messed with, while also making sure I'm going to have access to what I need. So it's clear to anybody looking at the project that you have to change that value, and I don't have to store it in the secrets.json file, though I certainly could do that as well. All right, so client.repository.getAllForOrg. Oh, sorry, first what I'm going to need to do is also, what did I call it? Organization. Let's call it organization name. Okay, I'm going to go into my strongly typed settings that I had created. We'll do public string organization name get set. All right, so now we should have that coming through as well. And I can say get all for org. Since I've got the GitHub settings coming in here, now I'm going to say, okay, private GitHub settings, gh settings. All right, and obviously some of the stuff isn't sitting great with me, so I'm definitely going to be doing some refactoring here, and that is okay. That is a-okay. So let's go ahead and make sure that we're saving those settings as well. All right, so now we can refer to those later on. Oh, GitHub settings.value, because it's an I options of GitHub settings. Okay. So assuming that's good, we'll want to do get all for org, and we'll say GitHub settings dot organization name. This is so there repos equals. The repos is great. It's going to be a task of I read only of repository. So we're going to be doing some async. So let's go ahead and convert this to a task of I action results. And let's do await here. And we'll make this async. Okay, so now we know we'll do some async there. Okay, repos, unnecessary assignment. Yeah, okay. So it's an I read-only list of repository. That's great. So now get all for org. We should be able to say, I want to, now remember, I don't want, if I was to look at the actual contents of this object, we can see that there's actually a lot of information here. And I don't care about all of that, and I'm a big fan of only passing back what we need, which is why I created a GitHub repo object here. So I want to do repos dot, so we'll say var result list. I love result as a generic variable name, not the best hygiene for now, but we'll do result list as repos dot select. I want to select a new GitHub repo. And I've got the name, right? So I want x dot, we can do name or full name. I believe full name includes the org as well. So in this case, since we know the org and we're limiting to one org, we're going to go ahead and just do name. All right, so now I should have to list. So that now should be a list of our GitHub repo object, and it is. We're going to go ahead and say turn view result list. I should be able to say in our view, or go to home and index, we should declare a model here. Model is a list of GitHub repo. All right. And now in my Razor view, underneath here, let's just go ahead and add another div. Okay, so we will say at for each var item in model. The model is that reference to that list of GitHub repos, and we'll want to put this in a unordered list. Say for that we'll want to do a list item, and we'll say item dot names. That should, if all goes well, give us the actual repositories here. Now should have this should work because I've got that secret stored in my app config in my secrets file there, and I've got the other org name stored as well. So assuming I have the permissions and assuming that key has the appropriate amount of permissions, I should be able to make this happen. All right, it's built. Let's go ahead and start it up. Okay, so it looks like it didn't actually do the transformation that I thought it did, which is completely fair. I could have sworn that overrode. Oh, we called it organization name. That would do it. All right, let's double check that. Make sure I got that right. I did call it organization name, I believe, right? Organization name. Okay, so that we'll go ahead and build that again. Start it up again, and now hopefully we'll have a little bit better luck now that I've actually named the configuration variable after what it's supposed to be. Okay, and granted the styling is not excellent, but what we can see here is that get all apps here. Now interesting to me is that I'm looking at some apps and I only see 20 of them, and I think interesting is that we actually have like 300, so I know that it is not giving me the full list. But for now we can commit, so you can say okay, getting list of apps, but actually that's not I really want to do separate commits here, so go ahead and say first we'll say added configuration for GitHub settings. We overrode config for GitHub organization name. All right. Add support for options GitHub settings, and then we have a full list of repos and display them. So I like to do this even if I've gotten a little off track, because those are probably commits that I should have made along the way, and that just kind of shows people what my thought process is a little bit more as I go. Hey there, Morzel. Great to see you. If you've got any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them in the chat. Always happy to talk about dev stuff, even if it's not totally on topic with what we're doing. So absolutely up for any questions that you might have. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back on track here. So first off, let's go ahead and get rid of that text centering because I don't think we needed that. Right, it's okay. So we'll sort of remove the text centering. By the way, this is one of the reasons also why I love working in Visual Studio Code a lot of times. The IntelliSense in Visual Studio is fantastic, and the way it's done is really hard to get away from. But I like to use VS Code because that command palette is so fantastic, and I love being able to just hit Control-Shift-P and pop down that command palette and then make a commit right there. It really helps me like stay in the zone. And I don't know why I tend to jump back and forth between GitHub Desktop and Visual Studio. It's really not not necessary per se, but it's something where just old habits die hard, I guess. Okay, so we've got that in place. Now let's figure out why the heck it was only showing me a few items here. So let's go ahead and look at our controller again. All right, so we know that it's selecting Oh, okay, so get all for org. Let's see what it says here. Ah, the default, there we go, gets all repositories owned by the specified organization. It's a paged collection. So that makes sense. So it returns a read-only paged collection key. So I think what we might need to do is, okay, is configure the page size, I think, which is probably going to be in API options. Let's see, new API options, page count, page size, specify the number of pages to return. I'm just going to go ahead and see, specify the number of pages to return, specify the number of results to return for each page, maybe less than this total if you reach the final page of the results. That's fine. So I was under the impression that get all for org would actually page through for me, and I may be wrong about that. Looks like potentially no. Okay, so let's go ahead and do page size. Let's see how high I'm allowed to set that. Does 1,000 work? I don't know. Let's actually look at the GitHub API and find that out, because I know that this is going to respect the GitHub API. All right. Let's go ahead and GitHub API page size default. .30 items by default. Default. You can set a custom page size up to 100 with the per page parameter. Okay, so it looks like we might need to do some code to go ahead and make some additional calls and kind of put this together and do a bunch of traversing here, and that's okay. Let's see if there's another option where this will do that. Get all for org, get all for current. Okay, so it looks like we may just have to do that. For now, let's double check and make sure my page size is, oops, make sure my page size is correct here. All right. Oh, we'll see if that updates it to 100, which I bet it will. Let's go ahead. All right. Interesting. So I still only see, is it 30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Interesting. Okay, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing what this is. It looks like we are only retrieving, and this makes a lot more sense. It looks like we're only retrieving the public parts, the public repositories from this organization. This organization has a lot of private repositories, but actually not a ton of public repositories. So that makes a lot more sense. In fact, I might not even need to specify this page value. So I'm going to hold off on that for now. Okay. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so the question then becomes, is there any part of the API options here? No, so that's only the paging. So let's look at maybe to do with my access tokens permissions. So 1 second, I'm going to pull up that access token again, and we'll rejoin. I just want to make sure the value is not showing. Okay, we are back. We are back here. And so notice what happened here is that I looked at, if I want the control of private repositories, I've got to check off that full scope, it appears. Otherwise, I can only access public repositories. I'm double checking and making sure there's no other way to get to that. Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to check that off, update my token. So now when we start the app, I predict that I'm going to see many more items. And just to be clear, I'm going to go ahead and log the number of items that come back as well. So we'll do logger. Oops. Sorry, spacing. Okay, there we go. Threw myself off there. All right, logger.log information. Let's say returning O count repositories, and we'll make that result list.count. All right, so that's some logger information. Just get an exact count out there in the logs, cause why not? By the way, this is all stuff that, as I mentioned, I would normally do some automated tests around this, and I certainly will again. Did I typo something up here? Oops. I certainly will do some automated testing around this. And it looks like already, if we have to do some pagination and stuff like that, I'll probably definitely start off putting some tests around that, and that's okay. But for right now, other than that, just a little bit of logging is pretty helpful for me. And so I'm just kind of wild westing it a little bit since we have the results anyway. This is me attempting to alleviate my guilt because I so often am an advocate of automated testing, and I teach courses on automated testing, and so it's important to me that I go ahead and try and do that. Okay, here we go. That looks like a lot of repos. So let's see here. Did it give? It doesn't look like 300 though. Did it limit to 100? No, 289 repositories. Okay, great. So that is getting all of the repositories. That's fantastic. I don't have to page through. That's really nice. Thank you, Octokit and GitHub, for doing that. All right, so now we're at the spot where I've got all the repositories shown. All right, so I've got my key. I've got that there. So next up, before, I guess we want to go ahead and push up these changes. We'll add some logging. All right, we'll push those up. Go ahead here, and not going to worry about this particular cleanup for now because add some to-dos, that's okay. All right, so usually I like to have the client already wired up and ready to go when I inject it. There's no need to do that in the constructor. And so I'm just going to add some to-dos around that. Okay. Push that up as well. And so to make sure this is going to work, in fact, I think we're at a spot where I'm ready to review this PR, maybe extract some of those to-do items into some additional GitHub issues just to make sure we don't lose them, and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, wrong window. All right. Let's go ahead and look at this pull request and see what we've got here. So one, it's no longer a work in progress, so we'll be able to remove that at the end. I do want to create those issues, so let's look at this. You know what? No, it looks bad. I don't ever like it. We're starting off with a new project. I don't want to start off with, adding, this list of like to-dos in my code. That's just gross. And we have such a clean project right now. There's no reason to have to exit it. For those of you who are just joining us, by the way, thank you very much for joining. I appreciate you being here. Feel free to jump in with questions about any of this stuff as we go. We're at the spot where we're committing our first change to this repository that actually just displays the list of repositories. And then we're going to work on the Azure necessities to get that into production. Okay, so but first, before we do that, we're going to clean up some of these gnarly to-dos because that is just plain wrong. Okay, so input checks. What we want here is, I want to say logger equals logger input, or, and this is something I really like this syntax in C#. What I'm going to do is logger. So what this line of code does, or should do, is, so throw new. So what this line of code does is it's going to assign our field to the incoming logger, or if that logger is null, it's going to throw a new argument null exception. I really like that syntax for some of the defensive programming. It used to be like a big if statement, you know, if is null, do this, otherwise set that. And so I like this syntax. I just think it's like a nice way to do a one-liner for it. So do that. We'll repeat that for GitHub settings. There. Okay. And, right. So GitHub settings might not be null. Right, so actually let's see here. It'll either be GitHub settings dot value. If GitHub settings dot value is null, it'll throw a new argument null exception. I think that's good. Again, I'm going to put some automated tests around this eventually. For now, I'm okay with leaving them off, because one of the things I'm wondering is if dot value, if it's null at that point, is it going to throw a different exception? And so I'm not going to get here. So that's the kind of thing I would add probably an automated test around. In fact, we may do that as a next step, because I want to get a test project in here as well. All right, so we've done those input checks. Let's inject the GitHub client ready to go. So let's rather than injecting the GitHub settings, let's go ahead and inject the client as well. So let's go ahead and in here in our home controller, we're going to have a GitHub clients. We'll do similar here with our guard clauses there. Private GitHub. Oh, okay. And so we're wiring that up. We're going to take this out of the way, and okay, we already do that. So okay, so now we've added some guard clauses and set some things. So settings. Now we'll go back into our startup here, where we have these services and add add options here. So we'll do services dot add transient GitHub clients. I believe this is what we'll do to get the service provider here actually, and then what we'll do is services. So we want to get service, or I think we do get options. GitHub settings. I believe that is the way we're going to do this. So in this, whenever this is requested, we will pull that transient there, and we'll say var settings, and then we'll say new GitHub clients, and we'll go ahead and pull that from our controller right now. So move that, add that here. So the settings here, and then we should be able to say settings dot value dot access token, and then var clients equals new GitHub clients, and we should be able to say actually return new GitHub clients. Okay, let's just call this service provider. Easier. We don't want to get confused with services. Okay, so we have that. We should now have the GitHub client getting injected directly, or it would be null. Do Do we still need GitHub Settings for the org, I think, right? Yeah. All right, well, we'll use that for now. Maybe we'll extract that out differently later so we're not actually having the access tokens sitting here as well. Resharper. Well, let's go ahead. Commit this. All right, so inject GitHub. We will inject the, oops, sorry. Inject the GitHub clients. I probably should test this. I'm being a little too confident here. Let's go ahead and we should see our 289 repos still, if this is the case. Hopefully it will be, because it would be nice to have something go right the first time. That would be nice. Okay, there we go. Great. All right, so we've got 289 repos. That's fantastic. All right, we'll go ahead and make our commit, inject the GitHub clients. Let's do some more cleanup. I see Resharper is helping me out here with some things. We don't need those namespaces anymore. We can probably make these read-only. Fine. Typo in that, that's fine. Okay. So, sharper cleanup there. Okay. We will push those items up. And in this case, now we're getting to a spot where I feel like we should have 0 to do. So let's go back and look at our pull request again. Right. So we've got our Poco there. We're injecting the settings in the client. We're getting the lists. We've added Octokit. No more to-dos. The transient service is there. Setting is there for Excelico by default in our development folder. Those are changed me. Okay, I think we're at a spot now where we can probably merge this in and call this done. We are listing the repository, so I think that's a fair spot to be. I'm going to go ahead and remove the WIP. Right? Remember we added that WIP bot there, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. And note that as soon as we do that, the checks refire. That WIP bot says, okay, we're good to go. Our the Azure DevOps here, let's go ahead and look at our pipeline as that progresses. I think it should be hopefully close to done at this point. Looks like it took it a minute to start there. So I'm curious, for those of you who are in the chat, if you're willing to share, I'm curious as to what kind of experience you've had with Docker or Azure Web Apps or .NET Core. I mean, how familiar are you with the stuff that we're going through today? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, just to kind of understand and gauge where you are as a cohort here on some of this technology. So if you get a chance, drop that in the chat room, and I'm excited to see where we're coming from, what our backgrounds are. Also, I'm interested in your opinion. I've been looking at doing some music for this, and I understand that I'm sort of talking almost continuously, and some folks prefer that, I understand, and some folks prefer some music or something like that in the background. And so if you're interested in music or something along those lines, let me know that as well, because I want to take that into account. All right, looks like our build has finished successfully, which is always a nice thing. I'm going to go ahead and merge this. And also I realized I tend to I've been creating merge commits. My usual preference there is to squash and merge so that this all turns into one commit, which is what I want. So we can see here, all right, basic Poco and some comments. All right, so we'll keep all those comments for now. That's great. Okay, so now what's happening is this is going to get deployed, right? So this is going to get deployed to our Azure web app, which is going to totally fail because we don't have the deployment key. We don't have the GitHub personal access token available for usage. And so we're going to have to add a config value, right, for those tokens and for the organizational value there. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. But remember, we said in the beginning that I don't want to store that token directly in the configuration because it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. And so as that's being deployed, we're actually going to create some more infrastructure to help us out with that. So we're going to go back over to Azure here. And in our Azure portal, I'm going to go into my resource group for Comma Repo, and we can see we've got our Azure web app in here, we've got the container plan, we've got the container registry. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and add another resource, and this is going to be an Azure Key Vault. I'm going to add a Key Vault for this here. So go ahead. Okay, Azure is apparently experiencing authentication issues. Sure. Go ahead and hit Create. Now our Key Vault here is going to be, it's going to be in the Comma Repo resource. I'm going to call it, Key Vault is going to be called Comma Repo, why not? We'll call it Comma Repo Vault just to kind of give it a unique-ish name there. We'll put it in East US 2 with the rest of things. Soft delete, sure. Retention period, 90 days, sure. Not worried about purge protection, so go ahead. And if you've got questions about what these are, oh, good. Thank you for the feedback that the tools are new and that you're good with that music. I really appreciate that. These tools are something I've worked with a little bit, so I'm happy to be introducing them to folks. And along those lines as well, if you are interested in the tools that and how they work and some of the basics, and I start to skip over them, definitely ask me to go back or ask me to explain any of them. I'm happy to go into a tangent on all of this stuff. So I have. Let's go back to my Key Vault. So I've got, I'm enabling the soft delete of keys. So if I delete a key, it's going to allow me to capture that again. And then after 90 days, it'll remove that key. So in terms of the access policies, this is interesting. Just double checking. I don't want to do an access policy yet because what I'm going to do actually is create a managed identity for my web application. And you know what? Let's do that first, actually, because we might be able to knock that all out at once. So forget what I'm doing with the Key Vault for a second. In order to grant access to our web app, or to the Key Vault from our web app, what we're going to do is use a feature in Azure called Managed Identity. We're going to give our web application in Azure a managed identity that lives within Azure that's sort of like a user account for that web application. And then we're going to provide, we're going to allow that web application access to this Key Vault. And now I didn't remember the screen existing previously, so it looks like we can associate those permissions with the Key Vault as we're doing it, which is great. So actually, we're going to abandon this for now. We'll come back to our web app here. And within our web app, we're going to click on the identity setting down here. And in that identity screen, we can see there's a system assigned identity and a user assigned identity. We're going to create a system assigned identity. We're going to enable that managed identity. It's creating it. Fantastic. So it's registering that application user with Azure Active Directory. Great. We can give it role assignments if we want to, and that's excellent. So now we're going to go back and create that Key Vault and see if we can actually set up those permissions right off the bat. That would be really nice. Okay. Let's go into our Key Vault again. Apparently I searched a slightly different way. Okay, there we go. Create. Okay. So we're going to start in our resource group here. We'll put it back in that Comma Repo resource group. We'll set that up again. Comma Repo Vault. East US 2 again. We'll leave those other options as they are. Now, access policy. What we should be able to do, my hope, is to create an access policy right now. We can see that I've got access to this Key Vault. Let's see if we can grant access to that application as well. So let's go ahead and we're going to allow secrets. We want this user to be able to access secrets. And so, sorry, I selected key permissions. Secret permissions. I want them to be able to get and list keys. I think that should be good. no other permissions there, so we're going to select the principal. And I should be able to search conma repo. And look at that, I can see now conmarepo.web is the application that we had registered. So we're not going to do that. This is actually our web app here. I'm going to select that. That's the managed identity that was created. Awesome. And we can, let's see what authorized application. Authorize an application to perform specified permissions on the user or group's behalf. I think I don't have to specify my web app there. I'm going to go ahead and add it without doing so. I think that should be okay. All right, so we've got the secret permissions there. And I'm not worried about setting a secret. It's purely read only. Okay, so that we should be good. Let's go to networking next. Public endpoint is fine. I'm not going to add tags right now. Generally speaking, I'm a good big advocate of adding things like tagging your resources. But since I got them all in the same resource group and I know the ownership there and we're all good, I'm going to go ahead and leave those tags and not do that. So we go to our review screen. And that makes me really happy because usually there's like 12 steps to then go create the managed identity afterwards and then add it to the key vault again. It's nice that they're letting you do all of that. It's set up. I think that might be some new UX. I don't recall that being the case before. All right. So the deployment is in progress. Hopefully that won't take too long. In the interim, I'm going to look up the syntax for how to get a configuration value from the Key Vault into your Azure web app. Okay, great. So actually, let's do that. The resource is created, so we'll bounce over to there and we'll add our secret. Okay. So I'm going to add a secret here. I'm going to call it GitHub Access Token. We're going to go ahead and enter the secret. So give me one moment, and I'm going to switch onto the secret. I'm going to copy that GitHub Access Token I'd created, and I'm going to put it into the value there. And then that's the last we should probably see of it. So one moment, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've copied that secret in here, and I'm calling it GitHub Access Token. That's the name of my secret. So go ahead and we'll click Create. It should add that secret. We see the secret is there. And I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And we should see there's a current version there. And I'm going to double check and make sure that I can't see the actual secret. So I can't. So look at that. I can copy the secret value if I want. That's fine, but it doesn't show it. I could add an activation date, expiration date. That's fine. But the key property of this is the secret identifier. So when I look at the secret identifier, this version here, click into that, and I can actually see that there's a secret identifier. This is the sort of URL that I'm going to copy. Now it's okay if you see this, right? Because you don't have the permissions to get into that key vault. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that token here. Now there's a certain syntax, and that's what I'm going to look up, where I can, within my Azure configuration, reference this key vault value, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to say Azure reference secret in app config in environment variable, I think is what I can do. Use Key Vault references. That's what they are called, Key Vault references. And it is going to be secret URI equals. Okay, so it's going to be at Microsoft.keyvault, and then we'll do secret URI equals, and then that secret that we copied here. So let's create an additional window here. So we have them side by side. And we will go to our web apps settings, our web apps configuration here. Okay. Recall that we had created that GitHub Settings access token value. So I'm going to do GitHub, new application setting. GitHub Settings, we'll use that double underscore convention because we have that colon, which is represented by a double underscore in this format. GitHub Settings access token. I believe that's what we called it. And now for the value, I'm okay if you see it because it's that reference string. And we're going to say secret URI equals. We'll copy that secret URI here. All right. It's not a deployment slot setting for now. We only have one slot, so we're going to go ahead and say OK. So now we should have that setting there. And hold on for one moment. I'm going to open up Visual Studio, and I realize I've got my secrets.json still open. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that away real quick, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, I am back. So now what we should have at this point, hopefully, is we should have, when we save this, our application should be able to make use of that value in the Key Vault. And with any luck, we're going to go ahead and see the, we're going to go ahead and see that result. Let's go to Overview. It's updated the web settings. I'm going to be superstitious and just restart that container. Okay. Now let's go ahead and go to our website here. With any luck, we'll see the actual GitHub repositories. That would be awesome. All right, we saw an error. That's okay. It happens. We'll see what's going on there. Let's go to our log stream. Okay. Fish starter. Alright. Instance ID, put up. Alright, let's see what's going on here. Okay. Do we see anything in the logs? No. Okay. Let's try and think of what's going on here. Our releases, make sure that our release actually made it out the door here. Okay, release is there. So it did put that out there. Any changes since then? Okay. Let's see. So what I want to check next is, was the format of my secret URI correct? Perhaps I got that wrong. Secret URI equals. Okay, so it is just the URI of that. Okay, so let's double check our configuration. We'll make sure that's right. And thanks again for those of you who are joining us. Again, I'm pretty new to this streaming thing. I've given some talks before, and I've done some training classes before, and I always love getting into these things and explaining them. But streaming is an entirely new medium for me, and I'm not, I'm still getting comfortable with it. I'm still getting familiar with it. So any feedback you have on things that could be improved or ways that I might be able to tweak this for you as an audience, I'd love to hear them, because it's a whole new medium audience. I'm still getting used to a lot of stuff. So your feedback is always welcome. You can drop that here in the chat. Feel free to email me or find me on Twitter and drop that feedback there. I'm always open to feedback. You can feel free to be pretty blunt. I like to hear the feedback in its truest form. So don't feel like you have to sugarcoat it if there's something that you'd like to see changed. Okay, so I see here in our GitHub settings, I can see very specifically that it is a Key Vault reference, so it looks like that is picked up on that. GitHub settings access token is correct. Our URI is captured correctly. Okay, it sees that it is resolved. Oh, this is nice. This didn't used to be like this. The Key Vault reference details, I now get a link to the secret. That's really nice. Oh wow, I like that a lot that I can get to that right from here. Okay, that is correct. So then the next question becomes, okay, why is it not working then? And let's double check. So it is GitHub. Oh, you know what? Maybe. Oh, in my app settings.json, I don't think that I actually. Oh, hold on a second. Pull my. There we go. I didn't pull my branch, so no wonder it looked old. Okay. Now we can see GitHub Settings Organization Theme. So So something's going wrong. We don't have access in the logs. I think I'm going to go ahead and enable, since I can't see the logs for some reason and the log streaming isn't doing what I want it to do, I'm going to go ahead and enable the development environment again. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Maybe this is the... Okay, Octokit get all pages. Okay, so change me repos was not found. So it looks like it has not gone ahead and modified that config. So same thing. Okay, orgs change me repos. Okay, so it's not, okay, silly me. Of course it's not working. I didn't add the other setting. That's what you get. I forgot that I have it in the development. I have it in the development file, but I didn't add it here. So we're going to go ahead and add. It's right there in front of me. GitHub Settings Organization Name. Let's go ahead and add that again. Thank you, Streaming Logs, for allowing me to see what the error of my ways was. Add our settings. So again, GitHub Settings __ Organization Name. Excelico. All right, let's save that. Now I have much higher hopes for this doing what it needs to do. Let's go ahead and pull it. Oh, we may need to restart here. Okay. Let's go ahead and refresh that page. Okay, well, we've got other errors potentially. So let's look what we got here. Oh. Okay. Looks like it may not have pulled the latest since that build finished. Okay, it was in the middle of deploying. Okay, that's fine. Initialize successfully. Let's try this again. Let's see here. Okay, great. So now we have our list of applications. So to recap where we are now, we now have a situation in which we have our code working. We have our code working, and it is being built through Azure DevOps in a container. It is then being released through Azure DevOps, pushed to an Azure Web Apps for Container instance, and then the key for our GitHub is being pulled from Azure Key Vault into the environment variables of that Azure website, and it's all working together just fine. So I feel pretty good about it at this point, because I feel like now I've got a decent build process, I've got an understanding of where those secret values can live, I've got the protection in the future if I need to expand stuff, I'm already transforming some configuration, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. And so at this point, I think we're at the spot where I want to kind of think about what's next. And so I'd mentioned automated tests and adding some of those, and I think that's what we might do to round out the rest of today. So I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to use XUnit, and we'll do some basic tests just to get that going, and we'll probably also maybe extract a service of our own to kind of do this stuff with our GitHub client, unless we can mock it out. Maybe we can mock it out. So we'll go ahead and see, and a quick show of hands on the chat. This is probably the thing I'm going to do to wrap up today, but I'm curious as to what your background is with automated testing, or with XUnit or NUnit or any of those libraries that are pretty popular today for automated testing. Have you never written an automated test? Have you written a bunch of automated tests before? I'd love to hear that in the chat. So feel free to drop a line there and let me know what your background is on automated testing. Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to start by, while I'm waiting for those chat messages, I'm going to go ahead and create another GitHub issue. So it's fantastic that we've got that done. Never written an automated test. Fantastic. Great. I'm really excited to hear that, because I think that we have a lot of opportunity to dig into some of the fun stuff about writing automated tests. And so I'm a big fan of them, and we'll dig into some tooling, and we'll add them to our build process as well. So that's awesome. Very happy to hear that. So add some unit tests. We'll leave that pretty vague. That's okay. All right, so we'll pull that down. What number issue was that? That is issue number 16. All right, so we'll create a branch. We'll call it 16, introduce unit tests. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a test project. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add an additional project to our solution. We're going to call that repo.web, and we're going to go ahead and add a new item. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a class library, and we're going to use that class library to, oh no, sorry, not a class. We're going to add a new class library to our solution. Oh, sorry, thank you. Thank you about that. I had intentionally stopped showing my screen at one point, but then I forgot to bring it back. So thank you for that. This is what's awesome about things like Twitch, is because it really is like a two-way street where folks are helping you out as you present, and I absolutely love that. That's been really sort of rewarding for me. Okay, so we're going to add this project to our solution. We're going to look for a class library. We'll add a .NET Core class library. Visual Studio will stop responding for a second. That's always fun. Okay. I have no idea what I could be doing that would be so taxing to Visual Studio as to make it look for a class library. Okay, now I'm actually not going to choose a class library .NET Standard just because of the way some of these tests might be run. I'm specifically going to choose .NET Core. I'm not building a library for others' consumption, so I'm not so worried about targeting .NET Core versus .NET Standard. I'm going to go ahead and add that. We're going to call it, the location here is, I'm just going to double check. So I'm actually going to add it one level up. repo.web. I'm going to add it to the SRC folder alongside that repo.web. We're going to call it repo.web.tests.unit. In this case, since we'll be doing unit tests mostly, that's how we'll form it. Naming convention I tend to follow is the name of the project tests the kind of test that it is. So that's usually the convention that I choose. We'll create that. Now, in this case, you could use XUnit or NUnit, both very popular libraries for tests. It's been a minute since I've used XUnit, even though I'm getting more involved with the NUnit project actually. So I'm going to go ahead and probably add XUnit for our tests. Okay, and then we'll spend a little time thinking about what we want to test. All right, so tools. you get package manager. We'll add the package manager console here. So install package xunits, and we'll install that in our tests project there. Okay, so now xunit is installed. Great, great, great. All right. Now, just to give you a quick introduction to writing an automated test and some of the aspects of xunit, right? Tests in general are going to reside in a class that's going to have a name. Say I'm testing the thing, or my doodad. Then the test class will probably be my doodad tests, right? So we'll append that to the end of the class. I tend to have the test structure mimic the production code structure. So when we do add those tests, we'll probably keep we'll keep the structure in terms of the controllers folder, the models folder, etc. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and so with a test, something like this, what you're going to do is you are going to add a constructor. Well, you don't have to add a constructor. So what we'll do is we'll actually add a fact. And now in xunit, there are two types of tests that you can run. I mean, at the basics, there's certainly more things that you can do with pulling data in and things. But xunit tends to operate with two ideas. One is a fact, and one is a theory. So a fact is something that should always be true, should always run, and a theory is something that you're inputting data into, which means the test might be correct, but it also theoretically could fail if you give it the wrong data, even if the test structure itself is correct. So fact and theory are the two attributes that xunit tends to use the most. So I'm go ahead and say a public void 1 plus 1 should be 2. Now, it's not a great test naming strategy, but we're just trying to go ahead and understand what this library is doing. So var result equals 1 plus 1, and we're going to say assert equal. We're saying the expected value, it should be 2, and the actual value is whatever is in result. So that is a test. If we were to run that test, it would either pass or fail. So let's go ahead and there's multiple ways that you can run tests from the Visual Studio menu. You should be able to say run all tests here. So that's going to go ahead and it's going to, I believe, build your project and pop up a window and do some things. So we'll go ahead and add that down here to our screen. So we can see here it has discovered a test project. It has discovered xunit. It's found our tests. My doodad tests 1 plus 1 should be 2. It's building our project right now, and then it's going to go ahead and run those tests. And so we'll let that do its thing. And it should be very quick. Unit tests are very quick by nature. And I usually do one of these at the start of my project just to make sure I've got everything set up and like that whole process end to end is working correctly. And what I'm also seeing here is that don't know why that's not being run. Let's see if we can run all. Unexpected error detected. Check the test output pane for more information. Let's see. Unable to find. Oh, you know what? I think they have to do the xunit. The xunit needs like a Visual Studio adapter for displaying tests in Visual Studio, and that's totally okay. I'm not actually as concerned about that right now. I'm more concerned with just getting tests to run. I have a phenomenal extension that I like to use for my automated testing. It's a tool called NCrunch, and what NCrunch? Well, apparently I need to enter my license for that, but I do have that. Okay, we're not going to go down that road. I also have ReSharper here, so. NCrunch, we'll use that in a future stream for sure, but NCrunch, what it does is it allows you to run your tests continuously in the background every time you type a key, and that's fantastic because as you're typing your test, you're getting that real-time feedback. It really helps cut down on that cycle of like, okay, I wrote a test, now I have to run all my tests. Did they pass? Did they fail? NCrunch is really smart, and it will detect generally the tests that are affected by the code that you just changed. So if you have 10,000 tests and you changed code that only affects 20 of them, chances are you can actually just get it to run those 20 tests, and so it's much more efficient in that way than some of the other continuous testing solutions I've seen. I also have ReSharper installed, so we need, now look, we see Okay, NuGet package Microsoft.net.test.sdk is not installed. Let's do that. I'm fine with that. What was that? Microsoft.net.test.sdk. Soft.net.test.sdk. Thank you, ReSharper, for that heads up. It's always nice when your tools give you a little bit of heads up there. All right, so give me so one moment here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this test. And I see another prompt here to install xunit.runner.visual studio. So let's go ahead and do that. Really appreciating the tooling that my IDE is giving me here. And so looks like it's installing that. Installation is finished. Okay. All right, I see that those tools do appear to be installed. I'm going to go ahead and build, and now we should be able to run those tests. Okay. So I'll let ReSharper take over. Now this is ReSharper's unit test sessions window. Visual Studio is a little simpler. But we see here it's building the project. We've got the progress there. The tests are pending. We should see them run. Okay, and so we do see 1 + 1 is indeed 2. The last thing I'm going to do right now for now is we'll say okay, we'll commit here. We'll say packages and a test of tests. All right, so we'll commit that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm actually going to add the Fluent Assertions library as well, just because I love that package. I love writing my tests in a slightly more human readable way for my assertions. And so I'm going to add this project. And what that's going to do is we'll actually say, rather than assert.equal, we'll say result.should be 2. I like that reading. I like the way that reads a little bit better. And so I can go back ahead. I can go here to my test sessions again. I can run those. It'll build my project again. And this is what nCrunch does sort of for you behind the scenes. It's going to constantly sort of build your project and run those tests. And so you lose a little bit of time when you have to do that each time manually. All right, so it looks like our test is still passing, so we've refactored that. So say install and use Fluent Assertions. And you know what, unfortunately, I'm looking at the time and I've only got like 2 minutes left, and so we're not going to get done this today. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to put this in a work in progress pull request, and what I'm going to look forward to doing is coming back hopefully next week, getting some tests around this project or doing some over the weekend, and going through a tour of some of the things we've done since that time. And so if there's anything that if you're looking forward to following along with this project, I definitely encourage you to subscribe to my feed so that you'll get a notification when I go live. You can follow me on Twitter, where I'll normally announce that I'm going to go live on one of these sessions, and we'll go through some things. And if you're interested in topics, I mean, we covered a lot today. We covered Azure DevOps, containers, Azure Web Apps for containers, Azure Key Vault, all of those items, unit testing, some concepts around unit testing. If you're interested in any of those other topics, feel free to let me know what you want to see, because I'm always up for sharing knowledge. I'm up for exploring things together, and that would be a really fun way to get into some of these topics. So for now, I'm going to create a work in progress pull request here, and actually I'll make a quick note that this will eventually resolve number 16. Okay, and so now it looks like we're at the end of our stream today. I really appreciate you showing up here. It's been great to code alongside of you. Looking forward to hearing your suggestions on ways we can improve the stream, on ways we can explore new topics, and looking forward to coding together in the future. So stay tuned for our next session. I'm going to hope to start this up again early next week, if not over the weekend. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And in classic style of my sign-off line that I've been working on is, I love you all. I hope you take care of yourselves, and I hope you're well. And we will see you soon for more coding. All right, thanks everybody. Goodbye.